Hey everyone, and welcome back to Mighty Habits. I'm your host, Steven. We always like to kind of dig into stuff that can really make our lives better. Today we're going to be talking about something that's pretty interesting. It's also maybe a little bit scary. Radical longevity. And we're not just talking about like living a little bit longer. We're talking about stretching those years out, making them vibrant and healthy. Imagine a life where you're not just, living longer, you're actually thriving longer. That's kind of the whole idea behind radical longevity. And it sounds pretty tempting. I know what you might be thinking. Well, this is probably going to be about some rich guy who spends all his time in a hyperbaric chamber, sipping on some weird green juice or something. Well, you're kind of right. There is a rich guy involved, Bryan Johnson. He's like a tech entrepreneur or something. But here's where it gets kind of interesting. This guy has spent something like $2 million on this whole quest for radical longevity. But most of that money isn't going towards like fancy treatments
Mhm.
or some like secret potion or whatever. It's going towards research, like serious data-driven research on himself. Like, think about that for a second. This dude is tracking thousands of data points in his body every single week. He's measuring how old his organs are biologically, his blood, even his earwax. He's basically turned himself into a walking, talking lab experiment for longevity. And one of the craziest things he found was that listening to loud music actually made his left ear age faster, biologically. Who knew? It's those kinds of little discoveries that make Johnson's whole approach so interesting. He's not just like following the latest fads or relying on, what people say. He's using actual data to figure out what actually works when it comes to longevity. And speaking of things that really make a difference, let's talk about sleep. This guy Johnson calls himself like the world's best sleeper. And he might actually be onto something. He's been able to sleep perfectly for like 8 months straight. And the crazy thing is, it's not some super complicated routine or anything. It's like 5 simple things that he says anyone can do. So what are these 5 magic steps? First, he makes sure his bedroom is totally dark and cool, like a cave, basically. Second, he doesn't look at any blue light for at least an hour before bed. No scrolling through your phone in bed, people. Third, he goes to bed and wakes up at the same time every day, even on weekends. Consistency is key. Fourth, he makes sure he gets enough exercise during the day because, a tired body sleeps better. And finally, he finishes eating at least 4 hours before bed to give his body time to digest. You might be thinking, okay, sure, those sound reasonable, but is sleep really that important? Well, according to Johnson's research, even one night of bad sleep can have a huge negative effect on your body. He says it's like being legally drunk and having a mild traumatic brain injury at the same time. That's pretty scary. And it's not just about feeling tired the next day. Bad sleep has been linked to all kinds of things: less willpower, gaining weight, even a higher risk of chronic diseases
Yeah.
like heart disease and diabetes. So yeah, sleep is kind of a big deal. But let's move on from sleep for a minute. Talk about something else that is just as important: food. Johnson's diet is super focused on foods that are packed with nutrients and have solid scientific evidence to back them up. Things like broccoli, cauliflower, lentils, hemp seeds, berries, nuts, all that good stuff. But here's where things get a little weird. He eats all 3 of his meals before 11:30 in the morning, every single day. It's called time-restricted feeding, and it's becoming pretty popular in the whole longevity world. The idea is that by giving your body a longer break from eating, you're giving it more time to, repair itself and regenerate. There's actually some interesting research coming out that suggests time-restricted feeding could be good for a bunch of things, like controlling your blood sugar and even improving how your cells work. But wait, there's more. Johnson found out that even when he was eating the healthiest foods, he was still getting some toxins in his system. So, being the overachiever that he is, he started his own company called Blueprint to source the absolute cleanest, most scientifically backed food possible. He's even gone so far as to create his own personalized meal plans based on his own genes and microbiome data. I mean, that's pretty intense. But it does highlight something important. The quality of our food matters. In a world full of processed food and hidden toxins, it's more important than ever to pay attention to what we're putting into our bodies. And speaking of things we're putting into our bodies, let's talk about another thing Johnson is kind of obsessed with: minimizing how much microplastic he's exposed to. Yeah, those little bits of plastic that are like everywhere these days. You might be surprised how common microplastics really are. They're in our water, our food, even the air we breathe. And while scientists are still figuring out the long-term health effects of microplastics, there's a growing concern that they could be causing a lot of health issues. So what does Johnson do to avoid them? Well, he avoids drinking from plastic water bottles like it's the plague. He carries around a stainless steel bottle wherever he goes. He's even got a reverse osmosis water filtration system at home. because believe it or not, tap water can have a lot of microplastics in it. But it's not just about water. Johnson tries to avoid plastic in pretty much every aspect of his life. He switched to using glass and stainless steel containers instead of plastic. He doesn't use plastic wrap, and he even tries to buy clothes made from natural fibers like cotton and hemp. He even has a HEPA filter vacuum to get rid of any microplastics in the air at his house. I mean, you don't have to go as far as Johnson does to avoid microplastics. But there are some simple things we can all do to reduce our exposure. Switching from plastic water bottles to reusable ones is a good place to start. Choosing food that's packaged in glass jars instead of plastic containers can help too. And hey, maybe think twice before buying that fleece jacket made from polyester. So we've talked about sleep, diet, and even microplastics. But Johnson's approach to longevity goes beyond just these things. He's a big believer in the power of systems. He's basically created a system for his health that's like an algorithm. He tracks tons of data points, puts them into this algorithm, and then lets the algorithm tell him what to do, from what to eat to when to go to bed. Now, most of us don't have access to fancy algorithms like Johnson does, but the idea behind it is something we can all use. It's about setting up systems in our lives that support our health goals and help us rely less on willpower. Think about it. You probably already use systems in other parts of your life. You use a calendar to keep track of your time. You use a navigation app to get around. And you probably have a system for paying your bills. So why not do the same thing for your health? Instead of trying to resist that donut with willpower, create a system that makes it easier to choose healthy options. Stock your fridge with healthy snacks, meal prep on Sundays, or find someone to keep you accountable. The key is to create systems that take the pressure off of constantly making decisions and make healthy choices the easy option. Here's another interesting thing Johnson says. The key to making habits stick is to focus on how you feel after you do something, not before. Think about it. You might not feel like going to the gym before you go, but you know you'll feel amazing afterwards. It's the same with sleep. You might want to stay up late and binge watch your favorite show, but you know you'll regret it in the morning when you're tired. By focusing on that good feeling you get after you do something, you're more likely to keep doing it. Johnson's a perfect example of this. His whole life is built around systems that support his health and longevity goals, and it's clearly working for him. He's achieved a level of physical and mental well-being that most people can only dream of. Now, I know you're probably thinking, this all sounds great, but does this guy ever have any fun? To be honest, Johnson's approach isn't for everyone. He's given up a lot of things that most people enjoy, like going out late, eating indulgent meals, even coffee. But for him, it's worth it. He's put his health and well-being above everything else, and he's proof that you can achieve amazing results by focusing on the basics and creating systems that support your goals. So if even a guy like Bryan Johnson, with all his money and resources, relies on simple habits and systems, what does that tell us? I mean, are the real keys to longevity all about fancy biohacking and expensive treatments? Or is it more about nailing the fundamentals? You know, things like sleep, what you eat, exercise, managing stress. Maybe it's about setting up systems in your life that help you be healthier and not always relying on willpower. And maybe, just maybe, it's about, questioning what we think is normal and challenging the things that stop us from living our healthiest and happiest lives. Think about one little thing you could start doing today to make your health and well-being a priority. It could be as easy as going to bed 15 minutes earlier, or ditching that plastic water bottle and using a reusable one instead. Little changes, if you do them consistently, can really make a difference. Until next time, keep those habits mighty.